Shields and swords, field of wars, fighting my blood down to the core. Warriors from medieval age, fear the reign of night brigades. Crusades into the room, moving through the temples and tombs. Scared and placed, prepare to face Professor Awesome and the minions of doom. 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 Professor Awesome and the minions of doom.
I think that maybe the most exciting part of the history of the kings of Britain, you might argue, is the section about the House of Constantine. It's well constructed. It's full of a lot of exciting plot lines, but it precedes Arthur. So it's one of the things that people think, well, why is this in here? And I think one of the reasons that people miss how interesting and well constructed it is because of this crazy section on the Prophecies of Merlin, which is dropped right in the middle of it. So to think about this, if you've read the history of the kings of Britain, I'd like you to just sort of imagine that we take the Prophecies of Merlin out and we just leave the two sections, the one before and the one after, that take us from the coming of Constantine until the coming of Arthur at the beginning of the next section. All right, so obviously, Constantine comes on and he dies very quickly, and then we have Constans with Vortigern as his puppet master, and immediately we see the same kind of themes of treachery. Right, whenever things are going bad, it's because they've either divided the kingdom or things are treacherous. So things start off well, but now they're going to go on a decline, and almost the moment. In most translations, it's the next paragraph. Almost the moment that Vortigern crowns himself king, then the English arrive, the Anglo-Saxons arrive, the people who will ultimately conquer the Britons, they arrive. So Vortigern obviously is, on the one hand, he's a Briton, but he's depicted as a kind of villain in some ways. And I think this gets us to this U-shaped structure where things start off well, but you would think they wouldn't because the Romans have just left. And we have a kind of decline through Vortigern. And then we're going to come back up again through Aurelius and then Uther Pendragon up at the end again, where things will get better. So I think one of the best ways to track this, obviously Vortigern is, he's treacherous, he's not loyal. But I actually think the best way to do this is to think of this as a tale of two women, right? So very famously, one of the most interesting stories here is the story of Renwine, who's more often called Rowena, but in Geoffrey of Monmouth she's Renwine. And so Vortigern meets her, and he's immediately struck by her beauty, this English, Anglo-Saxon, the Saxon woman. We are explicitly told what she says. She's quoted. Very few people get lines in this, but she gets lines, and they're in English. And they're in English, in a sense, showing her foreignness, right? And it turns out she's a treacherous seductress, and Vortigern's own lustful desires are going to ultimately lead to his downfall. And we're going to follow that story down, and Aurelius and his brothers show up, and they're going to take revenge, etc. And we come back through the other side, and now Uther Pendragon. And if you're interested in Arthurian legend, if you're like, I don't know who these people are, I've heard of Merlin, of course, but who are these other people? Uther Pendragon is probably the first name that you know. By the time Uther Pendragon is king, we have another woman, and this is Igerna, or you might know her from other Arthurian legend as Igraine, right? And she's the wife of Gerloy, and we have this same thing where he also is taken by desire for her. But unlike the treacherous, seductress, wicked Rowena, or Renwine, the Saxon woman, she is a British woman, good and virtuous. And the only way for Uther to manage to get with her is ultimately to use magic to trick her. And in that way, he's able to fool her. So in both of these, we have someone being treacherous, right? But in the first instance, it's the woman who's the seductress. In the second one, it's a woman who has beauty, but being British, her beauty is associated with her innocence. And then we have Uther Pendragon is the one who then is treacherous because of this. And this is going to not be able to, he's never going to be able to achieve the full potential of what he might have, again, because he is drawn to a woman who's not appropriate for him. And we have a clear contrast between the kind of suspect sexuality of the Saxon women versus the virtuous sexuality of the Briton women. And this is going to take us through this complicated and I think actually a lot of fun soap opera-like narrative until we get to the end of this. And ultimately, this is going to bring us to the coming of Arthur, who, as we've seen in so many other sections, he achieves what Constantine kind of promised with the coming of Christianity, and Constantine wasn't able to do because he wasn't in that position long enough. Arthur is going to be able to achieve the same kind of virtue, though often with similar problems having to do with women.